So I've had my Steam Deck for a good couple of months now, and spoiler alert, I absolutely chuffing love it. My Switch OLED is currently decomposing somewhere in a dark corner, untouched and unloved. That's how much I adore this stupidly huge fun box. For the past several weeks, I've been blazing through my Steam pile of shame, as well as tinkering with the deck to get non-Steam games and emulators working on it. And yeah, I am straight up addicted now, to the point where sleep is but a distant fuzzy memory. But it is far from a perfect portable console, not least in the fact that it is not particularly portable. So anyway, 2 months on, here's my full in-depth Steam Deck review, and by the way, this is the 512GB model, the most premium version of the Steam Deck you can get right now. I will discuss some of the upgrades you get with this more premium model and whether I think they're worth it. And for more on the latest and greatest tech, please do subscribe and ding that notifications bell. Cheers! Now, you may have already cottoned on to the fact that the Steam Deck is a bit of a big bugger, but nothing can really prepare you for the first time you pull it free of the cardboard box and clutch it in your sweat-moistened palms. I still remember quite vividly ripping the piss out of one of my mates when he got his Game Gear one Christmas for the sheer size of the thing, although admittedly I was basically just jealous of the twat. But in comparison, the Steam Deck makes even Sega's ill-fated portable console look like some sort of weenie toy for toddlers. It's 30cm wide, 5cm thick, and when you factor in the bundled carry case as well, this thing practically fills up my backpack all by itself. And obviously quite a lot of this case is padding, which is what you want out of a carry case to help keep your Steam Deck nice and safe, but look at the bloody size of it. I mean, basically by itself it is carry-on luggage when you bugger off on holiday. And the sheer size of it means that I have actually left it behind when I've buggered off on a trip, even though I really wanted to take it, because I just couldn't fit it in. I had absolutely no room. You're basically stuck with a terrible choice of, do I pack clothes or do I pack my Steam Deck and just wear the same pair of pants every single day? And at 669 grams, the Steam Deck is a bit of a heifer too. That's no problem if you're resting it in your lap or on a desk, but if you're reclining on the sofa or in bed, your arms will be aching in no time. Or at least they will if you have scrawny little fish finger limbs like myself. And I gotta say, Valve's design isn't particularly sexy either, with nary a splash of colour or any kind of frills to speak of. But on the flip side, there's also no stupid, pointless RGB action slapped on here. But it's good news as far as durability goes, because the Steam Deck certainly seems well suited to life on the road if you can actually find some space for it. After 2 long months of abuse so far, not a single scratch or scuff on that mighty display or the rest of the chassis, and those thumbsticks are still in full working order despite being twiddled to death. Of course, the true test for those will be after several months have passed to see if they are still in full working order, unlike the Nintendo Switches. But the good news is that Valve has already considered this, and it's partnered up with iFixit, who can supply replacement parts in the mail with clear online instructions on how to rip out the faulty old bits and chuck in the new stuff. And it's quite incredible really how pretty much every spare inch of the Steam Deck is covered in buttons, switches and other bits. You've got 2 analog sticks, 2 trackpads for seriously accurate control when needed, a D-pad, 4 face buttons, 4 shoulder buttons, 4 rear paddles, fast settings access, just loads of bloody ways of getting the deck to do stuff. Versatility is certainly one of the key strengths of the Steam Deck. It doesn't matter what genre of game you're into, strategy, action, adventure, whatever, you'll find enough twiddly bits in order to control it and get it to do what you need it to do. The only time you might feasibly need to hook up a keyboard and mouse is if you're delving into some of the more Linux-specific OS shindiggery, which we'll touch on later. I'm less impressed, however, when it comes to the Steam Deck's haptics. You do have 2 little haptic motors built into the touchpads, which are absolutely fine, but the actual haptics that come into play when you are gaming or using the touchscreen, not quite so good. I mean, it kind of just feels like a confused and angry bee has somehow got itself wedged in there and is busy thumping its head against the inside of the screen. Now boot up the Steam Deck and you're presented with SteamOS 3.0, which is basically an intuitive menu system designed around spaffing loads of cash on games and then playing said games. This will be perfectly intuitive to anyone who's used the Steam desktop client before. You've got all the different sections you'd expect, including of course the store. And thankfully the store section here on Steam Deck is designed around games which are guaranteed to give you a great experience with the green tick, as you can see there. I found it is a little bit shonky. You'll just be scrolling down this list and it'll suddenly just skip to the very bottom for whatever reason. So yeah, still some work in progress here. But you can quickly and easily switch to different categories and then flick through all of the titles that are super 100% compatible with Steam Deck. Just further verified there by the little green tick in the top corner. You can, however, browse all of the games on the Steam store, not just those which are guaranteed compatible. You'll see that quite a lot of Steam games still have the little question mark in that top right corner rather than the green tick. Thankfully, the good news is I have played a lot of these titles and the vast majority of them do still work absolutely fine on Steam Deck. Sometimes you get a little yellow eye, which indicates that they are playable on Steam Deck, but there might be some little issues that you have to contend with, such as tiny text that's hard to read, for instance. You've also got fast access to your wish list, and if you don't want to scroll around using the controls, you can just use the touchscreen, by the way, as well, which is nice and simple. Tends to work an absolute charm, no issues with the responsiveness or anything, it is multi-touch compatible. And if at any time you want to jump to a different section, just hit this Steam button down here, and this will allow you fast access to the library, the store, your friends section if you want to do that, see all the downloads that you've currently got on the go. And I really like the library section as well, because you can quickly see what you've got installed on your system. You can also swap to all of your library games, or you can check out just the ones which are guaranteed compatible with Deck. And changing up the settings on the Steam Deck nice and easy as well. Whether you're in the main menus or actually in a game at the time, you can just tap this little 3-dot button down here. This will show you exactly how much battery life you've got remaining. You can change up the brightness of the display, which is very handy because the auto brightness sucks. Toggle the Wi-Fi, get connected to a Bluetooth headset, yada yada, and this is also giving you fast access to your friends list. So there's a little bit of a learning curve when you first get the Steam Deck, but it is very intuitive indeed, and I do really like the way that it's all laid out. But of course, if you want to do something that's a bit more technical than just buying and playing Steam games, well, you will have to hit the power button and then switch to desktop mode instead. This is thankfully nice and quick, only takes a few seconds, and then you're straight into that Linux desktop. Now, if you're used to Linux, you will be right at home here. If you haven't played around with Linux ever, or if you haven't used it for about a decade and a half, during which time most of your brain cells have seemingly disintegrated or been killed off by scotch, then you might want to consult some online guides. I definitely fell into the latter category, but even if you've never used Linux before, you'll be able to pick it up pretty quick if you're used to Windows or Mac OS or any of your standard sort of GUIs. You can do lots of personalization. I haven't even bothered to touch any of that yet because I've been so busy doing other bits. And you've also got a great storefront here. This allows you to download a massive selection of apps. You can search for whatever you like. And you've even got some good old games on here that you can check out. I definitely find that using the old trackpad very handy when you're using the Linux desktop because everything is quite small. And I got to say, this desktop mode is still quite janky in its current state. The File Explorer always cocks up on me at least once, usually crashes on me while I'm using it. And sometimes you'll be typing away on the keyboard and it'll just suddenly disappear for whatever reason. So sometimes you just got to take a deep breath, maybe just step away for a moment before trying again. Now, the main reason for getting into desktop mode is to get non-Steam games working on the Steam Deck, although that's often much easier said than done. For instance, I've tried to get GOG games working on this thing numerous times. My first attempt was using Heroic Games Launcher, but that just seems to crash on me every time, so then I attempted to do it via Mini Galaxy instead. I had marginally more success with this one. I actually managed to get a couple of games running, but unfortunately, they then don't actually use the Steam Deck's controls at all. So all I get to do is enjoy any opening cutscenes and credits, and that's basically it. Not exactly fantastic. Thankfully, I enjoyed considerably more success when it came to emulation. It's a lot easier here on the Steam Deck now that EmuDeck is a thing. It is still a multi-step process, but it takes literally minutes. Just download EmuDeck via the desktop mode and then make sure you've got all of your BIOS and ROM files in order, copy them over onto the deck, job done basically. And even though I really don't need more games to play on the Steam Deck, I've got so many to smash through just on my Steam library, I do really enjoy just going back and playing some Game Boy Advance classics or a good bit of PS2 action. Absolutely ruined my pants with some Silent Hill 3 all over again, great stuff. And in fact, I've got to say that some of these emulators actually run better on Steam Deck than they have done on my full-on PC gaming rig. To actually store all of your various games and files and whatnot, you've got 3 different options with the Steam Deck. The base model has 64 gigs of space, otherwise you've also got 256 and 512 gig flavors. That base 64 gig model uses simple eMMC storage, so it's basically an embedded memory card, you can't remove it or anything, whereas the other 2 models use a proper NVMe SSD. And all 3 models support micro SD memory cards as well. The slot is just down here, it's a simple push in and pop out affair. And that's actually the easiest way of transferring files on and off the Steam Deck as well. This 512 gig model gives you plenty of space to play with and is also fast enough to keep load times from being tooth-gnashingly frustrating. Doom Eternal takes just over a minute to reach the hit A to begin stage, while loading a level usually takes between 10 to 15 seconds. It's not bad at all. And yeah, the Steam Deck isn't exactly the fastest around when it comes to booting up, but you can stick it into standby mode at any point with a quick tap of that power button, and then come back to it at any point, tap the power button again, and you'll be able to resume exactly where you left off after just a second or so. And by some sort of miraculous feat of engineering, this doesn't actually seem to drain the battery at all. And as far as performance goes, well, bugger all complaints from my side, the Steam Deck never fails to impress. You can essentially play any AAA title you'll find on the Steam store on the deck, despite the fact that it's just a dinky little portable. And yeah, sometimes you'll have to mess around in the graphics settings and sort of dial things down a bit to get a super smooth frame rate. Tops off at 60 Hz, by the way, that display. But even the likes of Doom Eternal played absolutely perfectly, no noticeable dips in the frame rate, even when it was set to the Ultra or the Nightmare graphics settings. It really is impressive stuff. Especially if you've ever been subject to the juddery frame rate experience you sometimes get on Nintendo's Switch console, especially with the likes of Outer Worlds and things like that. Ugh. So I'd certainly say if you have any kind of desire to get into PC gaming, but you're hesitant to splash out the best part of $1,000 on a fairly capable gaming rig, well, this will do the job nicely. And the Steam Deck can get slightly noisy once you do get gaming with the fans whirring away, although they do their job really well. The deck doesn't heat up under pressure, so there's no throttling. And usually I don't even notice those fans whirring, because either I've got the volume cranked right up through the speakers, or more often than not I'm just wearing a pair of headphones. But of course, if you are playing on the Steam Deck while you're curled up in bed at night with someone trying to get some kip right next to you, don't be surprised if they turn around and give you a swift kick in the shins, or worse. As for the display, well, I was disappointed when I heard that that 7-inch screen was a basic 720p IPS panel like the original Nintendo Switch, topping off at 60 Hz. Not exactly the kind of specs that really makes your undercarriage feel all tingly. Still, those visuals are sharp enough to enjoy any title out there with respectable viewing angles to boot. But it really is a massive shame that we don't get any OLED technology at all here on the Steam Deck, especially as when Nintendo released its fresh new Switch OLED model, oh my god, I just couldn't go back to the old IPS version because I was just so hooked on those rich, high contrast visuals. And this panel does max out at 400 nits, and you do have an anti-glare finish on this here 512GB model, and that proves just about good enough for playing outdoors. So when I'm sat outside, I've got no trouble playing colourful cartoony fare like A Hat in Time, as long as it's, slightly overcast or I'm sat in shade. But as soon as the bloody sun emerges, which I know is quite rare here in the UK, but humour me, sometimes it happens. Or I decided to play more murky fare like Quake or Doom Eternal or something like that, where you can basically just forget it. And this is again where an OLED screen would have probably helped out with the sharper contrast and everything, so just another nail in the coffin of portability. Still, I'm gonna say those built-in speakers are pretty bloody good. The Steam Deck can pump out a proper stereo effect, and on the top volume, those speakers can easily make themselves heard over all kinds of family-based screaming, screeching and chicanery. You got a headphone jack, you got full Bluetooth 5.0 wireless streaming as well, works absolutely fine with a variety of headphones and headsets, so on the audio side of things, all good. As for the battery life, well, that varies wildly depending on what you're actually doing with the Steam Deck. So for instance, if I was just buggering about in desktop mode, configuring stuff and trying to get to actually work, well, I generally got around sort of 5 to 6 hours of use on a single charge. However, when you're gaming, well, how long the Steam Deck will last will depend on the actual game you're playing. So for instance, the game I found that drained it the fastest was Back 4 Blood, and that drained the battery at the rate of about 10% every 10 minutes. So yeah, you get just over an hour and a half of gameplay before you'll need to refuel the thing. Doom Eternal wasn't quite so bad, it drained at about 8% every 10 minutes, you get a bit longer out of that one. Portal was one of the better ones, 4% drain every 10 minutes. And then of course older, more basic games, retro games, etc., the drain is quite minimal. So yeah, if you are pushing this thing with AAA titles, then expect around an hour and a half to 2 hours of gameplay. Otherwise closer to 4 to 5 hours if you are playing stuff that ain't gonna kill it quite so bad. And yeah, if you are well into your AAA titles, then again, the portability of this thing ain't as good as the likes of the Nintendo Switch. Not only is it absolutely massive, that screen's a little bit hard to see when it starts to get sunny out, but also the battery life ain't fantastic if you are really pushing it. And that right there, besides the occasional bit of jank, which is still cropping up every now and then on the Steam Deck, is my biggest problem with this thing, because even though it is technically a portable console, it really ain't portable, and 99% of the gaming I do on this thing is inside of my own home. But that said, I absolutely frickin' adore this thing. I haven't touched my Xbox, my PlayStation, my Switch, barely at all in the last couple of months. I've just spent all of my gaming time on this thing, whether I'm cozied up on the couch, reclining in bed, or just knocking about in the office. It's amazing how much stuff it will run, and the sheer versatility of it as well, being able to play the emulators and everything on it as well. It's a shame the likes of good old games and stuff like that can't work a bit better on it, or indeed at all. Others have obviously enjoyed more success in that area. I've just given up because I spend far too much time getting the buggers to work. But yeah, definitely a massive fan all the same, and I would be very, very keen indeed if Valve decided to do a Nintendo and release an OLED version of it somewhere down the road with a killer display that's actually easier to see outdoors. So that's my thought on Valve's Steam Deck, the 512 gig version. What do you guys reckon? Have you been using the Steam Deck as well? Be great to hear your thoughts down below. Please do plug subscribe and ding that notifications bell for more on the latest and greatest tech, and have yourselves a ruddy, wonderful rest of the week. Cheers everyone, love you.